Thanks for joining us. We begin with some very sad breaking news out of Calgary. Calgary police have confirmed they found the body of a child, and they believe that child to be 11-year-old missing Parker Wells, an autistic boy who has been missing since July 16th. Police say a civilian found the clothing Parker was believed to have been wearing, and his body was located a short time later.
It is believed Parker entered into a deep culvert on the west side of Deerfoot Trail, where he traveled into a network of pipes that crossed under Deerfoot Trail. His body was found in a small pipe on the east side of Deerfoot Trail. The Calgary Fire Department required specialized equipment to enter the tunnel system as the conditions were extremely unsafe. It's believed Parker was wearing all of the clothing he was last seen wearing when he entered the tunnel system. However, his shoes likely came off at some point and washed out of the culvert at a later time.
The chief says the thoughts of the Calgary force are with Parker's family, and she thanked everyone who participated in the search for the boy. In other news, the federal government has announced a plan to spend $1.9 billion to replace Via Rail's locomotive fleet. Making the announcement Wednesday in Montreal, Transport Minister Stephen McKinnon says the deal will create 1,200 new full-time jobs, with the first trains expected to be delivered by 2031.
Through this investment, Via Rail will receive 45 new locomotives to serve Canadians traveling on long-distance, rural, and remote routes. And the government is also investing right here in the people who work here, $357 million for Via Rail to build a new assembly and maintenance facility right here in Montreal. This announcement is about far more than new trains. It's about building our country, supporting our workers, supporting passengers, creating good jobs, and developing expertise right here in Canada. Stadler will complete the final assembly of up to 36 locomotives in Canada, with much of the work taking place at this very facility in Montreal. The facility will also serve as the long-term maintenance hub for the new fleet, marking the first time in decades that passenger locomotives for Via Rail will be assembled domestically.
The trains will replace Via Rail's fleet across Canada, except for the Windsor-Quebec City corridor, for which the federal government is planning a new high-speed line. And speaking of that high-speed line to Quebec, it appears Ontario Premier Doug Ford might be willing to make a deal. Sources say Ontario is reconsidering its support for the federal government's proposed high-speed passenger train service between Quebec City and Toronto. The sources say Premier Doug Ford agreed to support the Alto Rail project Prime Minister Mark Carney wants to build in exchange for federal support to expand Billy Bishop Toronto City Airport to allow jets to land and take off. The federal government rejected the airport expansion plans last week, and Ford's deal with Carney may now be off. 11 members of Ford's caucus say there are too many unanswered questions on the high-speed train project, and too many voices are being ignored, including those of farmers and landowners and in the municipalities. Prime Minister Mark Carney was in Red Deer, Alberta Wednesday to announce an investment that will see new housing in the province. The new partnership allows Alberta municipalities to access more than $510 million in federal funding over 8 years through the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund for housing enabling water and wastewater infrastructure projects across the province.
Because on top of that $510 million of federal investment, Alberta will contribute at least a third of the eligible costs for projects led by municipal governments across this province. Now, that's not all. The Premier and I are also working to complete a new Alberta-Canada agreement through Build Canada Homes to scale up affordable home building. And through the Build Community Strong Fund, which is a new fund, we'll build the broader infrastructure that growing communities across Alberta need, so roads, public transit, community centres, hospitals, clinics.
Connecting housing to critical infrastructure takes careful collaboration between developers, governments, utility companies, and a whole range of other stakeholders. The fact is that communities like Red Deer can only grow when the infrastructure beneath them grows too. And our government is committed to making sure that communities across Alberta have the water infrastructure they need to support residents, businesses, industries, and future growth. The agreement protects provincial jurisdiction, builds on a strong provincial record of investments in water and wastewater infrastructure, and gives Alberta this ability to direct funding where it's needed most.
Alberta has a goal to support and build 25,000 additional affordable homes across the province by 2031. There were some tense moments today in Washington, D.C. as Dr. Anthony Fauci appeared before a Senate committee looking into his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Fauci led the U.S. government response to the COVID-19 and, interestingly, received a preemptive presidential pardon from former President Joe Biden in January of 2025. The pardon covers any federal crimes he might have committed or participated in related to his official conduct spanning from 2014 to 2025. In his opening remarks, Fauci decided to go after Republican Senator Rand Paul, who is head of the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee.
Given Senator Paul's obvious obsession with calling for my prosecution, his repeated slanderous comments about me, and recently his publicly releasing my unredacted personal diary aimed at embarrassing and intimidating me, the only conclusion I can reach is that the sole reason he is calling me before this committee is to get me to say something, anything, that could vindicate his repeated public pledges that I end up, in his words, quote, behind bars. Under the advice of my attorneys, I will invoke my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution to refrain from answering your questions.
Fauci went on to invoke his Fifth Amendment rights more than 100 times, even refusing to answer questions about what day of the week it was or the color of the tie he was wearing. Meanwhile, excerpts from Fauci's unredacted diary show his biggest concern was not COVID-19, but rather how he was perceived by the media. Japan's prime minister says the death toll from Tuesday afternoon's powerful earthquake in southwestern Japan has climbed to 13 people. With many others injured or still missing, the magnitude 7.1 quake struck the Kumamoto area on the southern main island of Kyushu. Japanese soldiers have joined in search and rescue operations at a badly damaged shopping mall and collapsed houses. Hard-hit areas are also dealing with power outages, and all during a heat wave where temperatures were forecast to top 32 degrees Celsius. It has been a little more than a month since Venezuela was hit by two massive earthquakes, and while recovery efforts continue, thousands have been left homeless. The group Samaritan's Purse is on the ground providing help. We get more from their report in the Global News Alliance story.
What people have lost in this earthquake, I mean, in one word, is everything. They've lost their livelihoods, they've lost their homes, they're living out on a street. A lot of people have lost family members. Yes, we're providing water, but we also have to think about what the people are going through. Because when you look at that building there that is collapsed, that's not just a building. There, unfortunately, are people that are buried in there.
El venezolano hemos sentido angustia, desesperación, pánico, miedo, sobre todo miedo. En el sector donde estamos no tenemos agua, o sea, las mangueras se fueron porque nosotros nos surtíamos de agua en la montaña.
The water supply here comes from up in the mountains. There are pipes that bring the water down here. Unfortunately, with the earth moving, a lot of those pipes get severed. That's their only source of water. Samaritan's Purse, we set up a reverse osmosis system. It's something that allows us to pull water from the ocean, filter it, purify it, and then provide it as clean drinking water. We can support roughly 3,500 people a day for their water needs. Here, we are providing water to them, but what I really want them to take away, and I really hope and pray, is that they know Jesus as the source of living water, and that he is sufficient for them, and he will be there. He'll never leave them or forsake them.
Muchas gracias, de verdad, de corazón, muchas gracias.
Back here at home, Alberta is letting the dogs out in the water war against mussels. The province is adding more conservation canines and their keen sense of smell to sniff out mussels along shorelines and around boats before they reach Alberta's waters. 2 new canines, Winnie and Jane on the left and right respectively, will join veteran Hilo in the middle there in protecting Alberta's waterways. Hilo has spent more than a decade protecting the province's ecosystems. The province says single watercraft carrying invasive mussels can put an entire water body at risk, making early detection and prevention essential to protecting Alberta's environment and economy. A reminder that all watercraft entering Alberta must be inspected, and owners who don't comply will face steep penalties. The future of Lethbridge's integrated fire and EMS system remains unresolved after Alberta paused its EMS procurement process last June and opened negotiations with municipalities. Many hoped a solution was within reach. Instead, the province is maintaining its funding model, extending the deadline to meet the EHS benchmark rate to April 1st of 2028 and launching an independent review. Despite those changes, Mayor Blaine Hyggen says Lethbridge will continue rejecting the current funding model, arguing residents should not have to pay higher municipal taxes for what the city says is a provincial responsibility.
So they still require us to agree in advance to pay anything above the EHS funding model. So the end of the contract is September 30th, but there's a transition period for 6 months, which it takes us to March 31st of 2027. Ambulance service is the provincial's responsibility, so it's my hope that they have a plan B. This is their service, this is health, and it's something that we are not to provide. We are a contractor. They must have ambulance care provided to residents of the province, and so they would have to have that figured out. The most important thing for a community to know is that through all of this and all of these talks, and regardless of who the provider is, our community will not be without emergency medical services, meaning that an ambulance will be there when you need it.
On the financial sides, what does that look like for us? Well, that means up to that point, we're in the same position we have where currently the City of Lethbridge pays approximately $3.5 million annually as a subsidy into the EMS services. That will continue through that piece of the contract. There's a difference inside of that would increase to $7.7 million by 2028 with this latest piece of information that came from the Minister's office. That would mean that there would be an additional $4.2 million of pressure by that point.
Hyggen says the city continues to be open to further negotiations. Members of the Alberta Union of Provincial Employees working for the Good Samaritan Society have been rallying this week in southern Alberta. On Tuesday, continuing care workers in Raymond pushed for fair wages as negotiations with Good Samaritan for a new collective agreement have stalled. Union members in McGrath held a similar rally on Monday, and according to AUPE, a new payroll system has ongoing problems issuing overtime and premium payments to workers already dealing with long hours and short staffing.
Right now, the continuing care aides, the health care aides, and the licensed practical nurses that work here are paid considerably less than they would be if they worked for one of the other employers like Alberta Health Services or Covenant Care, Covenant Health, or Green Acre Society right now. Good Samaritan Society recently instituted a new payroll system, and there has been way too many errors with it that they are missing evening and weekend premiums. They are missing overtime. They're not getting paid properly for just their regular work week, and our members are not paid enough to be able to weather that while we wait for a correction to the payroll system. In this day and age with computers and everything, it just needs to be corrected out. They won't even give us dates until into September, and I mean right now it's the end of July. We have offered them several dates we'd like to get to the table to get a collective agreement hammered out so that our members can vote on it.
The Good Samaritan Prairie Ridge in Raymond reportedly employs 120 members. 22,000 AUPE members are employed within the continuing care sector. Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump is one of 3 Canadian UNESCO World Heritage Sites that this week are commemorating the nation's 50th anniversary of signing the World Heritage Convention. Over the past 5 decades, Canada has designated 22 sites, including Head Smashed In, that recognize cultural and natural sites with intrinsic value to humanity. Wednesday's celebration, according to the National Trust of Canada, underscored Indigenous importance to Canada's participation in World Heritage.
Head Smashed In tells the story of over 6,000 years of human activity here on the plains, the relationship with the bison. But the celebration today is also a real demonstration of how much this is a vibrant, living cultural place as well. I would say one of the gifts that Canada has given to the World Heritage Convention is really helping to move the bar on the way that Indigenous heritage is managed and treated within the convention.
Well, we'll have to give thanks to the UNESCO, the National Historic Designation, the Alberta Historic Designation, because it's with those designations that really support the preserving and preservation of this area, the land, and honoring our way of life, our ancestors, and allowing us to share our culture with people from around the world.
Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump has welcomed over 3 million people since 1987 and the opening of its interpretive center. They will celebrate 40 years as a UNESCO World Heritage Site next year.
Sean Haney here with RealAgriculture.com. The Canola Council of Canada is preparing for a major leadership transition at the top of Western Canada's most vital crop sectors. Chris Davison has announced he will step down as the president and CEO of the Canola Council effective the end of the year. Davison, who took the helm in 2023 after joining as vice president in 2021, really led the organization through a pretty turbulent stretch marked by trade volatility in key international markets, alongside a strategic restructuring of the council's core priorities. Despite recent trade friction with China, Davison points to many strong reasons for long-term optimism around the sector, highlighting massive investments in domestic canola crush capacity, growing biofuel demand, and record canola production, 23.4 million acres in 2026. The council's board of directors is launching an immediate search for his successor. For prairie growers, maintaining strong leadership of the Canola Council will be essential as domestic processing capacity expands and global market access will remain a top priority for sure. For Bridge City News, I'm Sean Haney with RealAgriculture.com.
The clock is ticking toward a strike deadline that could see 4,400 WestJet flight attendants walk off the job as soon as Sunday. Canadian press reporter Chris Reynolds has more.
Cabin crew at the Calgary-based airline voted 99% in favor of a strike mandate back in mid-July, and intense negotiations have been ongoing since then on a new contract. The issue is compensation for work done on the ground. That remains a key stumbling block in these talks, as it was nearly a year ago in negotiations between Air Canada and the bargaining committee representing 10,000 flight attendants who did wind up walking off the job in August. It's a different system of pay, but one that largely excludes, as the flight attendants describe it, labor that's conducted for the airline, just not in the air. Boarding, helping passengers with anything from luggage to a medical emergency, and also time spent waiting if there's a delay at the airport or sitting on the tarmac. So this is a real issue that's gathered some steam for unions in recent years, with flight attendants at Delta Airlines making the first inroads in North America in 2022, securing some degree of ground pay. 2 other airlines followed quickly, and Air Canada is the latest to have some compensation for at least an hour's worth of boarding pay or ground pay. So WestJet flight attendants are going to be looking to secure something of the same gains.
This afternoon, WestJet and the Flight Attendants Union reached an operational wind-down agreement. The deal outlines how aircraft would be taken out of service and how crews already in the air would be accommodated or transported back to a Canadian base if needed. Bell Canada is reporting a massive increase in the number of copper wire thefts across the country. Bell said on Wednesday it logged 993 incidents of copper theft and vandalism in the first half of 2026. That is a 78% increase compared to last year. Thefts in Ontario and New Brunswick account for 85% of the national increase, and while national arrests are up 32%, thieves continue to cause massive damage. To help track the issue, Bell has launched a dedicated website detailing local network outages caused by these cuts. Bell is also installing silent alarms on lines, deploying security patrols, and working with metal recyclers to spot stolen wire. And now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX is down 415 to 35,333. The Dow is down 1,153 to 51,594. The S&P 500 was down 112 to 7,316, and the Nasdaq was down 433 to 24,442. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 5.34 to 84.60 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 3 cents to 2.73 US. Gold was up 37.73 to 40.6606 US an ounce, and silver was up 52 cents to 57.61 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.30 per bushel. Barley is at $6.53. Canola is at $17.80, and corn is at $7.87 per bushel. Live cattle August contract was up 42 cents to $227.90. Feeder cattle August contract was up 120 to $344.27. Lean hogs August contract was down 242 to 167, and the Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours and currently sits at 71.20 US.
Recapping one of today's top stories, the federal government has announced an investment of more than $1 billion to replace 45 aging Via Rail locomotives in Canada. Transport Minister Stephen McKinnon made the announcement in Montreal today, where it was announced a new plant will be built for the construction of 36 new trains. Ottawa says the trains will be built by Switzerland-based Stadler, with the first 9 built in Spain and the remaining 36 built in Canada. Could digital identification and digital currency become the norm in Canada? Our federal government is already researching and experimenting with a government digital ID, and immigration is testing a digital visa, even though they claim they're not going to mandate it. So the question is then, why all these pilot projects? Up next, we speak with the president of the Privacy and Access Council of Canada, who has much to say about what's actually coming. And that interview is coming right up. Also, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. You can also visit our website or YouTube channel anytime for more of our content and poll questions.